and welcome to another episode of Boundless Body Radio. I'm your host, Casey Ruff, and today we have another amazing guest to introduce to you now. Eric Rogers is a natural-born leader and entrepreneur, and is the owner, operator, and CEO of Rogers Fitness Academy. Even though fitness and bodybuilding are his absolute passion, there is so much more to him than that. Eric has persevered through some of the worst things a person can endure: homelessness, addiction, violence, abuse, mental health disorders, incarceration, and more. During his darkest moments, Eric almost ended his life, which is when he decided to pursue a disciplined life and focus on fitness and nutrition. After battling and conquering some of life's biggest challenges, Eric is now a devoted family man, successful businessman, and mentor to others that are struggling and striving to become the best they can be, and uses the exact techniques that helped him to change the lives of others. Now his goal is simple: to spread this powerful message. You are what you strive to be if you put in the time and work. Eric Rogers, what an honor it is to welcome you to Boundless Body Radio.
Thanks for having me, brother.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it.
Such a cool honor. You are in Sacramento, is that right?
Yeah, I'm right in the foothills east of Sacramento, luckily. I'm near Tahoe, an hour away from Lake Tahoe. So it's pretty nice up here.
Nice. Oh, that's great. People talked a lot of trash about Sacramento. And I remember I visited
there's a reason why.
Is there a reason? I must have only been in the nicer areas then, if that's the case.
There are nice areas here. I'd say the outskirts of the city are nice in certain parts, but there's a pit. And back in the day, Sacramento was like rated one of the best cities in America when they were, when they had their growth spurt. There's a lot of money to be made there. And, it was a nice suburban area, and man, just a lot of homeless. And I'm not one to talk because I used to be one of them, but there's a lot of drug, a lot of gangs, and a lot of homeless people that wander, and a lot of crime out here. And it's, I'm lucky to live about an hour away from it, but you head down there and it's starting to look like San Francisco.
Wow.
Pretty quick.
Dang, that's too bad. Yeah. I must have avoided all of that the times that I was visiting Sacramento. As I was Instagram stalking you, I noticed a picture that you took recently in a building that was actually really special to me. And the reason why I was going to Sacramento, at least a few times, was to grand open the Lifetime Fitness in Roseville, which you were just at. So cool.
Okay. Yeah. I was just there last week for the first time, actually.
Oh, that's amazing.
It's a beautiful gym.
Yeah, it really is. I had to go out there to help them open, I want to say in like 2015, and the people were amazing. The training staff was amazing. And yeah, it was a really cool area of town. I also remember a place, I want to say it's called Jack's, that had the best tri-tip I've ever had in my life right in that neighborhood.
I haven't been there yet. I'm going to check it out. I'll write that down.
It's on your list. It's on your
Awesome.
list. Man, well, as we mentioned in the introduction, you have lived a hell of a life already. I would love to deep dive into your story and how, such tumultuous times found you in your life.
Yeah, man. I'll get to it. I don't want to take the whole podcast from you because it's a long story. I'll just be real with you. I spent the better part of my life in darkness, and from the age of 7 to about 24, I struggled every day, every single day. And a lot of it was caused by the beginning of it. At 7 years old, I was, put in a situation of heavy trauma, extreme trauma that changed my life forever. At the age of 7, I was sexually molested by my Sunday school teacher, and it just changed me, bro. It was hurtful. I didn't tell anybody. Actually, I didn't start talking about it till this year. It's something I repressed. It's something that I put away and, actually believed that it never happened. It was that bad. And I think the reason why I repressed it so much is because I knew I had to go to Sunday school every week, and I was going to tell my parents I was going to deal with it myself. And the week after, the next Sunday, I headed to church. I decided to take matters into my own hands, and I actually poured a cap full of bleach into her coffee, and I tried to kill her.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was 7 years old, and for some reason, I remember my mom saying like bleach was poison, and talking like, don't touch it, don't get near it. And that just sparked a thought. I'm like, you know what? Like, I hated this woman. She destroyed me. And so I handled it on my own. And like I said, this is very repressed because I was young. It's hard to even remember things that young, but I do remember those two key things. And, from that moment on, obviously she didn't die. She got really sick, but what that did is it scared me. I thought I was going to get in trouble. And so like, that was the real reason I repressed that memory. And I didn't want to admit it. I didn't want to tell anyone because I didn't want to get in trouble. And so repressing that memory as a 7-year-old will cause, you can imagine, some pretty deep trauma and emotional issues. And going through my childhood, my parents really didn't know what was wrong with me. I didn't tell them. Nobody did. Nobody knew. I was just different from my brother and sister. I was different from everybody else. I was depressed. I was suicidal. I was, I was an extremist, just negative, and just a bad kid. Right. And because of that, I was treated differently than my brother and sister were. And, over years of being treated differently, like in a way that I would consider not okay, some physical and definitely emotional abuse from every member of my family besides my mom, it just drove me deeper and deeper and deeper. At the age of 8, I started using drugs that I'd find in the house, my mom's prescriptions. I didn't really know what they were, but I found one of her painkiller bottles. I tapped into it and I loved it. It was the first time I felt normal, like I could cope, and I didn't feel the pain, and I was actually worth something, and I could socialize, and I was funny, and everything just felt okay. And so I just knew that I had to chase that feeling. It kept those painful, the darkness away from me, and it pulled me out of the suicidal thoughts. Like I'm one to say that drugs actually saved my life.
Yeah. Wow.
For a very long time.
Think about that. I mean, quite the statement.
Right. Yeah, no, it's crazy. Like without them, I don't think I'd be here. But then they also caused me a lot of darkness, a lot more pain. You can imagine an 8-year-old just growing up, finding any drug he could. Like, I mean, I was drinking bottles of Robitussin. I would do anything I could, taking like 4 doses of Benadryl at 10, 12, and whatever I could get my hands on that I knew would put me in an altered state of mind. So I didn't have to think about, what was happening, not only from my family because of my behavior, getting basically bullied at home, called all sorts of names, but from obviously what happened at the age of 7. And so getting into high school, I became extremely violent, and I'd get into fights and for no reason, and I just act out, and, I was always in trouble. I got sent away at, I got expelled my junior year, and then I got sent away my senior year. My parents just didn't want to deal with me anymore. So they sent me away to another school where they took care of me full time. And, I destroyed that too. I went down there and basically I got kicked out within, a couple of months, sent back home. And then when I got back home, I got into some cocaine. I started taking coke. I started, realizing I really love the uppers. I really love cocaine. And I started selling it. Basically got all my friends hooked on it. I basically sold to make enough money to buy my next fix. And, one day my dad went through my stuff. He found some, and I got that call. He's like, get your shit out of my house. I don't, you're no longer allowed to live here.
Wow.
You're done. And he didn't help. It wasn't like intervention, bro. Like
wow.
Where they at least offer you help. It was like, bye, you will not step foot into this house again.
Wow.
And that's when I just realized I was homeless. I had a job. I was working at Round Table. I was living in my car, and man, I lived out on the streets for a long time. But the first night, actually, I was homeless. I went over to a so-called friend's house, and, I was telling him what happened. I told him, like, I got to quit. I got to stop doing this. And the next morning when we woke up, he was, taking a bump of something white. And, he's like, you want a bump? And I was like, yeah, of course. Right. So, I took a bump, and it turned out it was methamphetamines.
Yikes.
Yeah. And so with that, I'm an extremist, bro. And I do something, I go hard, I go all in. And so, by the end of the night, I was smoking it, snorting it. I was taking, a massive amounts of it, and I became extremely addicted to it, up until the point where I was actually put into drug-induced psychosis, pretty crazy, where I was that guy on the side of the road yelling at cars. I was talking to myself. I was seeing things, seeing demons, seeing monsters, seeing my dad in trees, like shadow people. It was crazy. Like,
wow.
I was one of those crazy people. And, then I got picked up by the cops, and I went to Sac County jail for, a few weeks, but in there was the first time I had been sober, since I was 8 years old. And it was the first time I realized, like, you know what, this isn't that bad, which was kind of a cool experience. So with that in mind, when I got released, I did fall again. I did, get back into it, but I ended up picking up all my stuff and driving up to Truckee, California in the summertime. And I lived out 10 miles down a dirt road, and I slept, under a tarp for 4 months, by myself. I didn't really see anybody. I cleaned myself up, and I just separated myself from the world completely. I cleaned myself up, and then that's actually where I met my wife. And, we were pretty good. We partied sometimes, and it wasn't crazy, but we ended up getting into alcohol pretty hardcore. And so that was my next venture. So I spent my whole life just chasing just the next high, the next thing. And it was all related to, like, I couldn't really face my pain. I couldn't really face what happened. Up until the point where, like, my wife gets pregnant, and with our son, Levi, he's 4 years old now, but she quit drinking because she was pregnant. She quit doing everything. She cleaned up real well and just changed her whole life. And I was, my son was 1 year old, and I was still just drunk, just drinking a fifth a night of whiskey every single night for about 4 years. I did. And, got to the point where my wife was sick of it, bro. She's sick of it. I'd hurt them. I was just toxic, absolutely toxic, victim mentality. And, they decided I wasn't fit to be a father or a husband. And, that was the moment they left. And I was there again, like, left with nothing. I was just like, all right. Like, and so I started getting back into the hard stuff. And I started drinking more, and I got worse. Up until about 4 months later, it came to a point where I decided I was going to take my life. I was going to kill myself. And I put that gun in my mouth, my pistol in my mouth, and I put my finger on the trigger. And I hadn't left a note. I hadn't called anyone. So I knew this wasn't a cry for help anymore. I had made the decision. And it was that moment with that gun, it was like a realization, like, this is the end. And that pushed me to a point where I can actually see that I was the person that put me here, not my wife, not that lady that molested me, not my family, but it was me. Like, my actions brought me to this point, and I was now responsible. And it was the first time I ever took responsibility for my actions, ever. And that was also the moment I realized, if I can change what I do today, it can change my future outcome. And out of selfishness, I had that vision where my son was calling someone else dad, and my wife was being loved by a man better than I ever could. It just broke me, bro. And I just decided, I was like, I'm going to give this a try. I'm going to give this a year. And if my life's not worth living, I'm going to kill myself. And so I committed. And obviously it takes time to become extremely disciplined. It takes time to get better, and it takes failure. But I started implementing certain steps in my life that worked for me. And I started slowly getting better. And within 6 months, man, I had gained a ton of weight back. I was about 145 pounds when she left me. And, I right now I'm 230 pounds. I started going to the gym. I started eating. And I kind of used my appetite as a way of accountability, because I realized that anything that ruins my appetite is negative, whether it's stress, anxiety, depression, or drugs or alcohol. If I notice like an alteration in my appetite, I know that something's wrong. And so I kind of used that as a foundation to stay as disciplined as I could. If my appetite was good and I was eating my meals, like I was doing good, I was on the right track. And man, I pushed through this path for long enough to where I could call my wife and explain to her like where I'm at now. And she took me back, and man, I've been with them ever since.
Wow.
And I've been doing so good. And, you know, I built my coaching program off the exact steps that I took to get from that point to, you know, back to my wife. And, you know, I implement those steps into my clients' lives, and it transforms them too. It doesn't matter where they're at. Like if they're successful or in the hole, it changes their life. And so I just realized that discipline is a universal language that does work for everybody. And, you know, I built a successful business off of it, and I'm able to provide for my family, stay alcohol, drug free, and a huge influence to thousands of people.
Wow. What an amazing story. Thank you so much for being authentic and sharing that full thing. I really love the work of Mark Manson, especially in the book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. And he talks a little bit about fault and responsibility. And you mentioned, you know, taking responsibility for your own actions. And I look at that, you know, 7-year-old, 8-year-old kid, and I want to give him a hug. Like the kid needs some love and some understanding. And it's not his fault. All the things that would, you know, happen to him, you know, getting into drugs and alcohol and all that stuff, but realizing that fault is different than responsibility, and taking responsibility says, well, I didn't cause this to happen, but now it's my job to get out of it. It's such an important lesson in life that we all need to learn.
It's step one, bro, is taking responsibility. Whether you put yourself in that situation or somebody else did, like you still reacted to it, you know, and you could at least take responsibility for the reaction and how that's dragging you down.
Yeah, that's right. You mentioned it was kind of a gradual process to get your life back. You did also mention some of the steps that helped you along the way and things that you help your clients with today. What were some of those steps? What were some of the components that you decided to bring in that helped you kind of clean up your life?
Well, like I said, obviously fitness and nutrition were a part of it. And just living a healthy lifestyle. So the only way that I could go to the gym consistently and eat consistently was if I was off, you know, not doing the bad habits anymore. And so I used that as like an initial step to gain the discipline to let go of the old habits and stay on this path. And then I started waking up earlier, and, you know, I wake up and I started to create like a vision for myself. So I'm definitely a visionary. And that's what I teach my clients is like to find your vision and your why, what is going to drive you, what's your focal point, and what are you trying to achieve? And then with that vision, which for me at the moment was to be back with my wife and my kid and be a great husband and a great father. That was it. That's all I wanted. And so I reverse engineered what that would take on a daily basis to get there. So for me, obviously getting rid of any habits that keep me from being that person, and B, gaining the good habits and being consistent at the good habits and learning new things, new coping mechanisms so I can be that person. So fitness, nutrition, learning like human behavior and how my mind works, right? Understanding myself, visualization. And I had a lot of self-doubt issues, like very bad. So I had no self-worth, no self-love. And so a lot of affirmations and, you know, positive self-affirmations and self-talk. And man, I could probably list like a bunch of other things. I didn't really get into like time management or anything like that till I started my business. When I started my business, my routine changed. Everything changed because I had a bigger fish to fry. But what I teach is that, you know, no routine should be the same, and the routine should serve you. So it should change as you with whatever struggle you're going through, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. No, I mean, all of the things that you mentioned are such wonderful steps, but if you tried to do all of them all at once, that would just be too overwhelming. You're not going to be able to change those habits because they're so big or there's too many of them. I think about, my journaling habit. I've got a nice journaling habit that I've maintained every single day for a few months now, but it really only started with writing a paragraph and leaving it at that, and then writing another paragraph the next day. And you have to start with these habits really, really small so that they become fixed before you even really know it. They're just part of your life over time.
Exactly. And if you're consistent with it, you see almost an immediate result, and it starts building and building off each other. Right. And, there's some weeks where I'm doubtful of myself. And so I implement self affirmations, and there's some weeks I don't have like really any struggles at all. And I'm doing really well. And so I just get straight to work. Right. So it all depends. And that's kind of what I teach my clients, is to really become more aware of yourself, your mentality, your emotions, and build off of that.
Yeah. Interesting. You mentioned that fitness was kind of the first thing that you're really drawn to, that and nutrition. What principles did you start following? Had you lifted weights in the past? Had you gone to the gym in the past? What were you doing exactly?
Yeah. My dad put me in wrestling when I was in 6th grade, and I did that. And I was actually really good at it. Because I was pretty violent. So he's like, you'll be good at this. And I loved it. So that, being a wrestler was, probably a spark of a lot of it, just having, discipline. Not to mention my father was a Folsom prison guard for like 30 years. And so like my whole life was discipline. I just didn't listen. I did, I was diagnosed bipolar 2. And, at a young age, every time, I was emotionally abused or called names, I would flip out. I'd get so angry to the point where it hurt. I couldn't control it.
Wow.
And the one thing that I learned at the age of 8 was, if I go in the garage and I do pull-ups off the rafters until I can't do them anymore, that the anger subsided. And so I learned those tools a long time ago. And that's why it was easy to step out and try and implement those things again. Now that I wasn't using drugs to cope, I just remembered like fitness helped. And so fitness has kind of been a part of my life forever, and in a lot of ways. And I was always very active, and I was never inside. I was always outside. And so that just kind of came naturally to me. And when I started to work out, when I got off drugs, I started to eat food again, because I didn't really eat for 16 years, bro. I realized like my genetics were better than I thought. And I was putting on muscle quickly. And I was like, wow, like there's something to this. Like, this is like, I'm good at this. And so I started researching and learning like what food does, what types of macros do what. And I started to implement just more food and different types of food. And I watched myself grow. And it was like the first skill that I had that I just enjoyed a lot.
What things did you think you understood about fitness, the fitness side of things? We'll get to nutrition later, but as far as fitness principles, what things did you think you knew at the time, but you have since evolved your thinking about?
Man, I've always looked at fitness as a mentality thing. If you go read like my Instagram posts or any of my social media, I don't talk about fitness. Like, I don't consider myself a fitness coach. I use it as a tool to better know the brain and to master the mind. And so every time I went into the gym, it was like, no, I need to get these emotions out. And so I would go and just kind of push myself to the limit every single day. And I still do that in a way. Plus now I do focus on aesthetics a lot in my own personal life. And so just really learning like the human body a lot more, and, obviously how to shape it correctly so you look a certain way. I love bodybuilding, and, just, form and stuff like that. But I don't really dig deep into fitness itself. I take it very simply. Like with my clients, I'm like, no, fitness is simple. Nutrition is simple. You eat, you work out. Like, I just tell them what to do. What we're really trying to dig into is the mindset, right? So that they can excel. So yeah, a little bit about what I do. I work with entrepreneurs, business owners, and CEOs precisely. And I help them reach peak performance through fitness, nutrition, and mindset. So they're usually struggling with the glass ceiling or blind spots, and they feel like they can't grow. And I help them work through that by increasing their discipline and performance. If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And so exercise and fitness is just the way that you can show your self-discipline. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. That, and when you work on your body, it's going to give you the fastest result compared to anything else. Cause you go work on your finances, it might take a few years. It might take 10 years. If you go, work on a car, it might take a couple months, who knows? But when you work on your body and you dial it in correctly, you start seeing results almost immediately. And so when a lot of people like deal with self-doubt, what that does, or maybe they can't hit their goals because they don't have hope in their abilities to do something. What I do is I kind of use the body to show them that their work brings a result. And it starts to open up their mind and their business and their family, and how if they take control of something that they're going to see a result. So it, starts with the body, and then it starts to reflect on everything.
Yeah, I have certainly found that to be the case as well. I've heard you talk about in the past intentionally suffering, and I think fitness is a good example of intentional suffering. You're doing something that may or may not be super comfortable in the moment, but it's serving the purpose to make you be a stronger person, more resilient, more ready to handle stress. Can you comment a little bit about that?
Yeah, man, you said it pretty perfectly there. And you know that because you do it, right? To explain it to someone that doesn't really understand like why you do that, it's if you know David Goggins, right? He's all about it. Feel the pain, stay hard, whatever. What I like to do is I like to start my day off with it. So waking up and not pressing snooze, getting your ass up, heels to the ground, and get out of the bed. And the first thing that, the first feeling of that is you're putting yourself in a suffering place, because instead you could be sleeping in your comfortable bed. You could be hitting that snooze button over and over again until it's, you're ready for work. Next thing you know, you have a little bit of time to get to work, get your food, and then you go to work unprepared, stressed out, and soft. But when you get out of bed an hour and a half, 2 hours early, you don't hit snooze, you get up and you say, fuck comfort. And you hit that stair climber for 30 minutes with a hoodie on. It prepares your mind for, that to stay uncomfortable throughout the day. But man, if I hit the snooze button in the morning, I'm snoozing throughout the whole day. I'm seeking comfort throughout the whole day. So it really switches you from a want for purpose instead of a want for pleasure, which, man, in the world of success, that's the mindset you need.
Right. Well, it's so ironic because both of the scenarios you described is suffering. Like living is suffering. It's not ever comfortable. And so it sounds like you're finding ways to choose the comfort or discomfort and use it to make you stronger versus being uncomfortable, being late for work, that stressed person being soft. That's suffering too, just in a way that is going to make you feel like the victim versus you going and creating it for yourself.
Absolutely. There's two types of pain, right? There's a pain of discipline and the pain of regret. Like choose or hard. You've probably heard that. Yeah. Like life is hard, whether you choose to be lazy or you choose to be successful. But with one, there's a reward at the end of it, and there's no regret. And that's it. Either way, you're going to suffer. And my whole first half of my life, I chose pleasure. I chose to regret later. And now I've switched completely. I'm an extremist. Like I said, I'm bipolar. It's like I'm either one or the other. And I've switched, and it's like, no, I want to feel the pain purposely. I want to create chaos in my life purposely for a reason, so that I don't have to go find it, if that makes sense. Like I believe that stagnation is man's worst enemy. And if we're stagnant, if we're bored, if we're not productive, if we're not challenging ourselves, we're going to find chaos. We're going to find drama, whether it's alcohol, beer, drug addictions, relationship problems. Next thing you know, you see people and they're wondering why their life's all fucked up. It's because they weren't focused on growth, right? In my opinion, when you choose to suffer for the sake of growth, over choosing to suffer over loss, for the sake of loss or for pleasure, you're going to find your way into that vision or life that you probably wanted in the first place.
Yeah, that's so interesting and very well said. You mentioned nutrition, obviously being a cornerstone of what you've done. What things have you learned there along the way as far as sound nutrition principles?
Yeah, man, I always keep it simple with food, very simple. With my clients, I understand that not everybody can be strictly disciplined like I am. And I get that. Like I said, I work with business owners. They want to enjoy their life. They want to enjoy their food. And so I have a licensed nutritionist build them a plan. But the clients that come in, they're coming for discipline, and they're struggling in life. It's like, no, let's keep it strict. Chicken and rice, vegetables, beef, potatoes, shakes, bodybuilding type diet. And the reason why is because if you can diet, or you can stick to eating the same thing every day like a dog, like you can do anything. It's one of the hardest things to do. And I believe that discipline is acquired through your stomach. How many, I walk outside, I can smell French fries from a mile and a half away, bro. And it's most people would be floating over there like in the Snow White movie. Like they'd go buy it, they'd DoorDash it. People have a hard time controlling what they eat, and it shows a lack of discipline. But when you can control what you ingest, and that means everything, drugs, alcohol, soda, food, you'll notice that you're going to be also choosing better things in life. And it goes with the same system I was using, like choosing purpose over pleasure, like eating for function, not for taste. Right. And just looking at just changing your perspective on food, changing your perspective on pain, changing your perspective on life in general, and kind of looking at the long view instead of like, what can make me happy now?
With your clients and nutrition, food is really tough to nail down with people because it is so emotional. People have food addictions, if you want to call it that. People, have families and parties and all these things. In what ways can you help instill more discipline for people when it comes to eating? Because that can be a real challenge.
Yeah, the biggest thing that would help them is their vulnerability, first of all. And this is what every client has a hard time with, especially in an online platform, is they don't want to admit that they're struggling. So if you look at my posts, I'm extremely vulnerable. And so the people that come to me tend to want to open up to me. And I love that. And that's the whole like foundation of my program, my business is trust. Because if I can share my story and I can be vulnerable with what I'm going through, then they'll do the same to me. So we put them on a plan, and they go along. They're like, they're excited. I'm going to lose a bunch of weight and I'm going to get healthy. And then 2 weeks comes around and all of a sudden they disappear. You're like, where'd you go? But the ones that say, hey man, I'm struggling. What I do is we get on a call and we dig deep into their mind, and we're like, what is it actually happening here? Why every 2 weeks, like on the dot, right? And it's a mental limitation. It's a blind spot they can't see, but it usually dials down to something that happened in their past or how they handle their emotions. And so I teach them different methods to do that. And I help them understand themselves a lot more. So I'm kind of like a life coach, a therapist in a way, a little bit of Tony Robbins and a little bit of fitness, if that makes sense. And it works, man. We break those patterns and they never go back. I got clients that struggled hard with the program, and we just use it as a tool to show them what their weaknesses are, and we work through them.
That's great. You mentioned a few tools already, but maybe you could go in a little bit greater detail of what some of the most helpful, I guess, like mindfulness tools are to help change somebody's mentality.
Yeah, man. I think that most people in America, especially right now, probably deal with self-doubt the most. And so I can kind of hit on that. Just first of all, to be more mindful and to help your mentality at all, the first thing you have to do is be aware that there's even a problem. I think self-reflection is the biggest and best tool we could ever have. And literally being honest with yourself and looking in the mirror and asking yourself, like, why am I not growing? Where am I stumped? Like, what am I doing wrong? How am I handling my emotions? And when you could sit there in the quiet, which I don't see people do this anymore, and with no stimulation, and dig deep into your mind, your attitude, and your actions, and ask yourself why, you can find the answers really, really easily. It's kind of a trip. It's Our society has a hard time reflecting, and I'm trying to teach people this because it's my most useful tool. Because every day I sit down, and like you have your journal, I have mine as well, but I try to figure out where I went wrong in my attitude, what caused that bad attitude, and how I can deflect from that next time. Not deflect, but how I can control it next time. So my whole goal is to teach people how to be aware of their emotions and how not to react to them if they're negative. But the only way you can do that is by sitting down with yourself and understanding what are the emotions you deal with the most, and why did they come up. When you can do that, you obviously open up a can of worms to the past, most likely, but a lot of the answers are found in your past. And when you could work through those, whether it's trauma or whether it's something that you were taught, and you break that, you never have to deal with it again. Like, I've seen people with massive self-doubt, including myself, completely just become the most confident people because they first understood it and they figured out where it came from. And we kind of went back and either forgave that moment, or we learned new beliefs that would counteract it.
Sure. You talk a lot also about a growth mentality. And I think that leads to a lack of that leads to a lot of that self-doubt that you're talking about. Like if I want to start a business, but I don't have the skills necessarily to do that yet right now, then that might come in a form of self-doubt, and I might be afraid of failure, for example. Talk about the importance of having a growth mindset and knowing that even if we don't have a particular skill set currently, we can go out and grow that over time.
Right. I think the answer to that is all based on what you know and understand outside of your four walls. Right. So we're raised in a home with four walls, a box, and we're fed things from people we know. Now it's a little different because we have like the internet, Google, you could literally research anything, but we still limit ourselves to what our parents taught us, and what we learned is right and wrong. And you have to step out of your home. You have to go see what is out there in the world. And when you kind of get a taste of what's out there, you get a taste of what's possible. And that's exciting. Surrounding yourself with people that have a higher temperature than you will raise the temperature of your own house. It'll create growth inside of you. But if you're surrounding yourself with people that have limiting beliefs, just like why would you have a growth mentality? So, finding ways to plant more seeds, and, getting out there and getting the knowledge to water those seeds so that they can grow is the biggest thing. I hope that made sense. I kind of use a few metaphors there, but
no, that was very helpful. It reminds me of a part of The Untethered Soul where a guy decides he wants to build a building, in the middle of a field, a really beautiful spot, but he feels so safe in the building, and it eventually becomes dark, and he just stays in the building all the time and kind of forgets that outside there's free light coming in all the time, but he doesn't get to go see it because he's inside his own wall. And kind of makes the same point. Like, you have to step outside of that if you ever want to break through your self-limiting beliefs.
Absolutely. And it's uncomfortable, right? It's uncomfortable to be even told that you don't know that much. Like, there's so much out there we don't know, and it's hard to admit right there. And it's uncomfortable to go be social. It's uncomfortable to go put yourself in situations where you might doubt yourself more. So that's that's where the fitness and nutrition comes in. If you're used to making yourself uncomfortable every day, you're going to be, more likely to do it in other ways too.
Yeah. Wow. Well, speaking of uncomfortable, can you tell us the story, back in your own personal story of how your coaching business even came to be? Because it sounds like even that was pretty tumultuous and scary when that first happened.
Yeah. So I was back with my wife and kid. We're doing really good. I was a electrical foreman. I worked for a company for 6 years, and I was very loyal to them, and they were giving me more opportunity. It was a great career, bro. I was going to go pretty big. And one day I got a call and they told me I'm laid off. That's it. I'm done. And I was just like, wow. Well, like that feeling where like I was loyal to you and you just said goodbye, and you're not even going to give me like a 2-week notice. And, so really that kind of stuff really aggravated me. And
Was
I was
that
like,
during
this
the
is stupid.
pandemic?
It was right when it started.
Okay.
Yeah. Right when it started. And I was just like, wow. And so what I did is I went and found another job as an electrician, and I got there, and the way I am, I'm challenging. If you meet me, I have an aggressive demeanor. And if anybody has like ego, or maybe they're a little sensitive, like I'm not saying this in a way of like bragging, but people kind of get insecure around me. That's a fact. And I've always been like that. And I kind of hate it because people have like this first instinct that I'm a bad person, and I'm not. Like, I'm not at all. And so I wish people can see it, but it's just how it is. It's how my dad is. It's how my brother is. And I got there, and within 2 weeks, all the guys on the crew told the boss a bunch of lies, and I got fired.
Wow.
And I was just like, again, I was like, I don't know if I cuss on here, but I was like, fuck this, man. This is like, I can't feed my family. Like, I'm sick of having somebody tell me how much money I can make, how long I can work, and when I can work. Like, I was done. And I told myself right then and there, I was like, I'm never going to let another man control my life. I'm going to be in full control of everything I could possibly control. And that's just becoming more disciplined, in my opinion. And just being my own leader, being the leader of my family. And so I decided, because in the past few months, 2 friends came up to me because they seen how I changed my body, and they're like, hey, can you help me out with, weight loss? And I had 2 friends I built plans for, and they both lost 40 to 50 pounds in 3 months. And I realized I was really good at this. And thank God they did the work, because if they didn't, I wouldn't have had this seed planted. And so I decided, I was like, hey, babe, like, I'm going to try to start my own coaching business. And I went and I started telling my story. And at first I was just a fitness and nutrition coach, and I hated it, bro. I didn't like talking about how much protein you can eat, and like how do you do your meal planning. And I didn't like it. So I started to implement my story and the mentality. Dude, within 6 months of starting the business, I built a 6-figure business, and I was like meant to be. And since then I've been on some of the biggest podcasts in the world, and I've been able to help a lot of people, hundreds of people, and, have a life where I can choose to do what I want, how much money I make, and how much I get to work. So full turnaround from 4 years ago when I had a gun in my mouth.
Yeah, that's amazing. What's your vision for where you want to take the company in the future?
Man, I want to use it as a vehicle for a bunch of, I want to live the entrepreneur life, and I want to start up more companies for sure. I'd love to invest in real estate and get into that. I just like to challenge myself, but all in all, like I'd love to create a movement in a way, maybe an apparel business with a message behind it, and just kind of, motivate, inspire people, and help them to live their life to the fullest. And I also want to start like a nonprofit to help women that have been sex trafficked, recover and stuff like that. Because my wife, it's something that she's passionate about. So I want to make enough money to I want to make a ton of money. Let me rephrase that. I want to make so much money that I can help hundreds of thousands of people and give back, and just live a servant's life, right? Like, appropriately. And man, I just want to spread my message everywhere.
That's great.
That's all I want.
That's great. One of our past guests, Jeremy Herder, said to us, basically, if you don't want more money, it just means you haven't given enough yet. And I think that's exactly a really cool way to think of it. I want to go out and work hard and, create a business that's providing value for people that's really helpful to then generate money so that then you can go out and help other people. I think that's amazing.
100%. And it kind of stemmed from, I used to have a fear of money because I've been homeless. I've been broke my whole life. And Like money was always like, oh, I'm not going to have enough. And I had the scarcity effect with it. And how I fixed that is I started giving 10% of it away to like my church and stuff like that. And it made me let go and realize that first of all, it's just a tool. And like, I'm lucky to have what I have. And I'm a Christian, man, and I love God, and it helped me to have faith that this money was given to me for more than just my needs and wants. And more started flowing in. And it's kind of amazing how that works when you take, the scarcity away from money and stop looking at it like something you have to live and you're unhappy without it, and start looking at it like it's abundance. And I believe that God is a source of my supply, and he'll take care of every need. I just need to do what's right, what he needs me to do, and great things are happening. And they are. It's not only helped me, but it's helped my clients a lot too, facing fears and changing limiting beliefs.
For somebody who is just listening to your story now, obviously there's so many different takeaways, but if you could distill one takeaway that you would want the listener to take from your own personal story, what would that be?
Be grateful, man. Be grateful for the bare necessities of life. It's like that simple: your breath, the clothes on your back, the food in your fridge, and the shelter over your head. If you have those four things and you can be like happy with that at all times, and keep reminding yourself how it would be without it. Like if that's enough to fuel you, then you're always going to win. Right. But if it's because you don't have a BMW, then and that makes you sad and you want to be like everyone else on Instagram, like you're going to fail. So if you can learn to be grateful for your breath alone, like you are unstoppable.
It's so easy to get caught up in news cycles and stories of, terrible times all over the world without stopping to consider those simple things and, walk outside or breath of fresh air or, just seeing the ducks by the lake or whatever it is near you. There's so much. I truly, honestly believe there's so much more good going on all the time than bad. It's just that the bad generally grabs the attention and we can miss some of those simple things. What a wonderful piece of advice. I absolutely love that. Eric Rogers, where can people go to find you and find your work and connect with you?
Yeah, man. I'm on Instagram the most. So if you want to follow me, give me a follow and message me. I'd love to hear what you think about the story and how it affected you. The real _ Eric Rogers. I'm sure you'll put a link below. And then I have a website. It's rogersfitnessacademy.com. You want to see a little bit more about what I do if you're an entrepreneur or CEO.
Yeah, that's fantastic. We will absolutely link to both of those in the show notes. Eric Rogers, owner of Rogers Fitness Academy, thank you so very much for going through what you had to go through. Like I said, I just want to go back and give that kid a hug. But you've learned so many amazing lessons, and so glad you learned about discipline and mindset and mentality and all that stuff that just really helps change people's lives. And you're going out there and doing that, and you took a scary situation and turned it to your advantage in a way that you can help people. So thank you so very much for all of your work in your life, and thank you for taking the time to be on our show today. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome, Casey, and thank you for having me, brother.
Absolutely. It was an honor. And this has been another episode of Boundless Body Radio.